Hi and welcome back to my channel. I want to put this as kindly as possible. In my opinion, anybody who was a fan at the beginning of the era or even the middle has more of a say in this conversation. Putting it in this perspective, it's like hearing somebody's opinion on who they think were the most popular or influential singers or celebrities of a certain era. You can give your opinions, but majority of them would probably mostly be leaning towards bias and favoritism and a more narrow perspective versus somebody who actually lived during that era. They would be able to give details and a more nuanced opinion due to them seeing everything firsthand and actually experiencing it. Third Gen began in 2012 with groups like EXO, BAP, VIXX, and NU'EST debuting. It ended in 2018 with 4th Gen groups like Stray Kids and ATEEZ starting to debut. 17 is a name that is constantly being thrown around in this conversation, and while 17 are a really big group, they were nowhere near as big as they are now whenever 3rd Gen was happening. 17 were popular at debut, they were even talked about during their pre-debut era, but despite that, they were still a little bit unknown, especially considering the groups that had already debuted or were soon to debut. They were from a smaller company, but they were still doing very well, and while they were definitely starting to gain popularity, I'd say that it really more so started towards the end of 3rd Gen, with them really taking off in the 4th Gen era, especially after their company, Pledis Entertainment, was taken under the wing of HYBE labels. While no one's arguing that Monsta X is part of the big three, they're part of the honorable mentions because they were still very popular during that time. I would say that their popularity was honestly maybe a tad bit bigger than 17's in ways, but both 17 and Monsta X were definitely on the same popularity wavelength in my opinion. Monsta X is also another 3rd Gen group that is still releasing very good music, but they've definitely faded into the background. I honestly think that they had the potential to be much bigger than what they were, but with the entire scandal with Wonho, who was their most popular member that ended up leaving the group, I think at that time a lot of fans who were fans of Wonho also left with him. Not to mention that the scandal itself did sour the group's image in a lot of Korean fans' eyes. Open your eyes, open your eyes. So I've seen NCT be brought up in this conversation as well. But unlike a lot of the other groups, I actually really do understand why people tend to say that NCT is part of the big three. They were very popular at debut, thanks to them being an SM Entertainment group, and also being the first boy group to debut at the company since EXO. Not to mention that their units and overall concept was very unique and intriguing, as well as their music and sound being a bit different than what a lot of other K-pop groups were doing. Looking at it from the perspective that they had 3 units, NCT U, NCT 127, and NCT Dream, who were all a part of the 3rd Gen era, but were popular in different ways, with NCT 127 definitely being the most popular unit, and NCT as a whole being considered monster rookies. But they still weren't on the same level as other groups that had been working during that era for a good minute. They were similar to 17 in the way that they started to really pick up popularity at the end of the 3rd Gen era, with them becoming immensely popular during 4th Gen. iKON was already popular during pre-debut and at debut, with them being from YG Entertainment, but at the same time, their popularity was honestly low considering that they were from a really big company, and also comparing it to some of their sister and brother groups. Though they did stay a relevant name, I would say that their popularity didn't really spike until their biggest hit song, Love Scenario, came out. But at that time, the 3rd Gen era was already ending. They're another group that I definitely think had the potential to be much bigger in the 4th generation, but with the timing of a scandal coming out right after your biggest hit, involving their most popular member, BI, and leader, who did end up being removed from the group, similar to Monsta X and Wonho, the group just never recovered. Though BI is a popular soloist now who does make good music, iKON themselves have become another 3rd Gen group that struggles to stay relevant, though they do still have a small portion of dedicated fans. I love Astro, but they were nowhere near being one of the biggest groups of the third gen era. They didn't really have too many hit songs, though their music was very good, and their songs still seem to be popular among the majority of K-pop fans, even though they didn't get a music show win until 2019. But despite that, they did stay very steady within their popularity. And once again, even though they had really good music and were fantastic performers, they also came from a very small company that literally depended on their success. And undeniably, one of the main factors that was helping to push their popularity and keep them relevant was definitely their most popular member, Cha Eun-woo. He was one of the biggest K-pop idols ever, still is, but especially during that era. And this was mostly because of his visuals, with him being deemed as the perfect man. And because of this, he ended up getting a lot of brand deals as well as acting roles, which helped to promote the group as well. Astro still kept their relevancy and popularity very steady throughout the recent generations, even getting more music show wins in the recent years than they did in the beginning of their career. But most recently, the group has slowed down with promotions and comebacks due to one of the members, Rocky, leaving, and also the very sad passing of their beloved member, Moonbin. Winner was another boy group to come from YG Entertainment, and while they do have a lot of good songs, I will say that they follow along in the same footsteps as iKON, with really them being popular because they're a boy group from a big company, but still being pretty low in popularity. They had a few hit songs, but I think their biggest hit was Really Really, which came out in 2017, but even after that, we do kind of see them fade into the background. 101 to this day has one of the most popular debut songs ever. You could not escape Energetic, and surprisingly, most people didn't want to. While it was an overplayed song, it was very much loved by the majority, with it earning the most music show wins in 2017. And considering the fact that they were going up against the strongest groups that were especially dominating during that year, it was extremely impressive. And every single title track and B-side that they released earned several music show wins. I Promise You had 2, Spring Breeze and Light had 7, Beautiful had 8, Boomerang had 10, and of course Energetic had 15 music show wins. And take into consideration that they were not a permanent group and only lasted 2 years, I truly believe that 101 is the closest group to being in the big 3 out of every other group on this list. If they had debuted sooner and lasted for longer, they definitely would have been in the top 3. But also, there's no way that a group that's only going to last for a few years is going to be considered to be a part of one of the top 3 biggest groups of an entire generation. BTOB was a part of the start of the third gen era, but unlike most of the groups that debuted with them, they kept their sound and concept that did seem to be inspired by the second generation. While their most popular songs being ballads helped them reach extreme popularity in South Korea, it however hurt them internationally. Third gen saw a huge shift in popularity within K-pop, especially in the West, and because of this, more dance-heavy groups with poppy, upbeat songs were becoming much more appealing internationally wise. So I do think for BTOB, because of the fact that not only was their music very good, but they were also very talented, is the main reason why they were really able to hold their own popularity. It was also up to the fact that ballads themselves are also much more popular in Korea. Day6 was another unique group to that era, with there only really being a few bands active in the K-pop industry. I do think it was more so of a niche area, so even though Day6 were very popular and had amazing music, I think that's similar to BTOB, they just were in a different lane, and so while they kept a steady popularity with their fan base and maybe some casual listeners, I personally don't think that they were ever really going to be extremely popular. There are so many more more groups that I want to discuss, but I don't want this video to be extremely long. But groups like Block B, VIXX, NU'EST, and BAP are some more groups that were very popular in their own way and deserve to be in the honorable mentions as well. So I do want to acknowledge them because yes, I know that they deserve to be talked about in this conversation. And probably somewhere down the line, I'm going to do a third gen group ranking because there are many groups that just need to be discussed, whether they were popular or deserve to be much more popular. In no particular order, let's start off with clearly one of the most obvious choices for the big three in terms of boy groups of the third generation. I'm gonna start with EXO strictly because they were the first to debut within the big three. There is absolutely no denying that EXO were huge. They owned the entire beginning era of third gen as well as a bit of the middle and end. Nobody was on EXO's level for a good minute, but they also just had a very unique concept with all of the members getting their own superpower that I think really also made them very appealing to the public, as well as their unique unit concept with having a Chinese unit and a Korean unit, helping them to appeal to several different markets. With every comeback, they would have a Korean version and a Chinese version. They were also the first Korean artists to sell over 1 million copies of their album XOXO in its repackaged Growl. And though they did have a scandal with the Chinese members against SM Entertainment, with them taking legal action against the company due to mistreatment that ended with some of the members of the Chinese unit leaving the group. But despite that, EXO still stayed very strong within their popularity, as well as still being able to come out with several hit songs within the years to come and still top charts and sales despite not having that second unit. It's safe to say that EXO were one of the biggest monster rookies to ever exist in K-pop. They're just one of those groups that deserve all the hype. They're just as good as people say they are. Their music is phenomenal, not just the title tracks, but majority if not all their B-sides. Yeah, I don't really feel like anyone's questioning this. BTS is definitely part of the big three, though they might have started out as a new group, worked very hard to get to where they are. A group like this was very much unheard of at the time in K-pop. Most groups that were very popular came from bigger companies, to be more specific, the big three, SM, YG, or JYP. But BTS did beat out all odds, especially considering that they weren't the most popular for a good amount of time after their debut, which was 2013. They didn't really take off in popularity until 2015, which is the release of one of their most popular and iconic eras. BTS became so popular that they started to go head-to-head with EXO in the next year to come in 2016 with the release of Blood, Sweat and Tears that started the iconic era Wings. Around this time is whenever BTS would start to see more popularity in the West as well. As I said earlier, they were going head-to-head with EXO, who as we know was the biggest group at that time. It was so shocking that BTS were winning awards over EXO or even being put in the same category as EXO that many fans were starting to accuse them of manipulating numbers and charts in their favor, which would be the start of the infamous Sasaji accusations that would continue to haunt BTS within almost every era to come after. BTS would constantly put those rumors to rest, with their popularity and success only climbing with every comeback, beating out almost every other group and every nomination for Daesungs and many other categories every single award show, including music shows as well. It got to the point where companies started to avoid having their groups' comebacks around the same time BTS was having theirs, just to have a chance of getting an award. And I believe that honestly from 2017 on up into their military service, it was constantly like this. You knew BTS was going to win, quickly making them become a very hated group when it came to other fandoms, but a very beloved and idolized group whenever it came to other groups and idols. Not to mention the impact that BTS has had within K-pop, but also the entire world. Everybody knows who BTS is at this point. They're a group that dominates and became popular based off their hard work, amazing performances, and authenticity. It's easy to say that BTS is the biggest third-gen group to ever exist, but also the biggest K-pop group to ever exist as well. I think because they're not as popular now, and the fact that they did fall off in popularity during the fourth generation due to complications with their company and them eventually even leaving, that people tend to forget about GOT7, which in my opinion is fair. Even though I really love GOT7, it makes sense that they would fade in conversation, not to mention that a lot of newer K-pop fans will not be familiar with them. GOT7 did debut under one of the big three companies, JYP Entertainment, and though they weren't Monster rookies, they were a high-profile group. GOT7 became extremely popular a few years after their debut, but they were especially popular internationally. They had several global tours, and the fact that they had more diverse members than a typical K-pop group definitely helped improve their popularity. With 4 Korean members, a member from Thailand, a Chinese member, and an American member, while also having 3 fluent English speakers and 3 other members who weren't fluent but did understand English and spoke it. All of this made them even more capable of reaching a broader audience. Other factors like their acrobatic or martial arts inspired choreography and their constant high energy performances with their unique diverse style and sound, GOT7 easily became one of the most popular groups in the third generation. They had chart-topping performances with their EPs as well as some other songs. They were constantly in conversation with fellow K-pop groups like EXO and BTS, and are also one of the few groups to achieve multi-platinum certifications in Korea due to their individual personalities, but specifically the popularity of a few members like Jackson and Bam Bam, who were adored by the public, definitely helped push their popularity as well. I would even say that Jackson Wang is definitely one of the most popular idols to come from the third generation, and is also one of the most loved. Most of the members were constantly getting picked for variety shows and so much more, which of course, once again, helps push popularity to the group. I think the saddest part about GOT7's career is that even though they were immensely popular during their prime, they had the potential to be even bigger. Honestly, they just should have been much bigger than they were. But JYP Entertainment and their CEO is just a very odd company. They constantly sabotage GOT7's fame by turning down personal brand deals or offers from popular shows or celebrities, discouraging solo releases, promising future plans but not following through, canceling deals at the last minute, and making the excuse that GOT7 were busy even though they weren't, refusing to promote the members as a group or individuals. It's easy to say that JYP failed them as a company, which isn't shocking, but it is a deeper conversation for another time. There's also the fact that they were very unique, but I think in ways, though it did benefit them, I think long term it wasn't as beneficial. GOT7 not being able to stick with a certain concept or sound for 3 or 4 comebacks either at debut or after a hit song, I think was another thing to really hurt them. During the third gen era, there was a major focus on groups either having a specific concept or a consistent sound. Even after the third gen era, this is still a pretty big trend among K-pop groups, and that's mostly because it helps build a niche fan base that can end up becoming a more steady fan base. If you even put focus on the bigger groups during that generation like EXO, BTS, Red Velvet, and TWICE, all of them either had a consistent sound or a general concept. As I mentioned earlier, EXO had the concept that they were aliens from EXO planet, and each of the members had individual superpowers. BTS's concept had a huge focus on adolescence that grew into mental health, self-love, and acceptance, which could still relate to the adolescence concept itself. And in the era that they became the most popular, they had a consistent story between their music videos as well as short films that I also think helped push their appeal. Red Velvet killed 2 birds with 1 stone with having their concept connect back to a consistent sound. Their concept was based in the duality of their name, Red Velvet, with the red being their bright bubbly side that gave them more of a poppy, experimental sound to their music, while their velvet side focused on a more mature, elegant, and R&B sound. With this concept, they were able to flip back and forth to whichever sound they wanted for either comeback, which helped them explore in sounds but also kept them consistent with their audience. TWICE ended up being the most popular group to do a cute concept, and they mostly stayed very consistent with that concept until the beginning of the Fortune era. TWICE is a good example of a group that changed their consistent concept and ended up losing fans because of it. And keeping a consistent concept can be a good thing or a bad thing. We've also seen several groups stay so consistent with a concept or sound that people get tired of it. But in my opinion, I think as long as you're being innovative within that sound and concept, there's always room for more fans to come in in and old fans to be satisfied. But despite their company not doing as much as they definitely should have, they still kept a very steady popularity up until the beginning of the 4th generation. That's all for my video. Thank you all so much for watching. I may do a girl group version, but I would love to hear your opinions down below on who you think is the big 3 of the 3rd generation boy group wise. Please remember to be respectful of each other's opinions in the comments. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope everyone has a very great day. Bye bye!